And Adversity to Strength, I'm joined by Betty Guadagno. Before 2019, Betty's life was defined by heroin addiction, street survival, and devastating grief, including the loss of both her parents to suicide. A near fatal overdose became the moment everything shifted, forcing her to confront her trauma and decide whether her story would end there. What followed wasn't denial or quick fixes, it was the hard, deliberate work of recovery. Today, Betty lives in Brooklyn, works as a transformation coach, supervises peer advocate support and people in early recovery, and leads workshops and retreats through the Wheel Transformation in Motion. In this conversation, we explore addiction, loss, accountability, and what it truly means to reclaim your life when it feels like everything has been stripped away. Betty, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've been looking forward to speaking to you for so long.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks for creating such a cool space so that we can connect.
Thank you so much. Take us back to the beginning. Where did your journey begin for you?
Yeah, I grew up in a super chaotic, dysfunctional family. I grew up as the daughter of drug addicts, and my parents were the children of drug addicts, and their parents were the children of drug addicts. And it's been that way for generations and generations. And my whole family is this perpetual cycle of addiction and poverty and sexual trauma and incest. And it's been that way for a really long time. And so I thought that my life was normal growing up. I didn't realize that my life was abnormal until much later in life. Like, I thought that it was normal for you to steal your groceries from grocery stores. Like, my mom would always make me wear a really big backpack whenever we went grocery shopping, and she would shove all the expensive groceries into my backpack, and then she would only pay for some of them. Same thing with clothing. Everybody else was at the checkout counter paying for their clothes, but we're quickly running out of the doors of the store. I thought that it was normal to move once or twice a year. We would get these big pieces of paper, taped to our door. And as soon as I didn't know what the paper said because I was too young to read, but, they were eviction notices. And every time that piece of paper was on the door, we would pack up all of our shit and we would move. And I thought that it was normal to have a long orange extension cord going from your apartment to another apartment so that you could have electricity, because we were like borrowing our neighbor's electricity. And my dad would go away for weekend trips to jail in handcuffs, and my friends' dads were going away for weekend business trips. And that's when I started to really realize that my life was different, was when I got around other kids and I was going to sleepovers, and their house didn't smell like litter boxes and cigarettes. Their houses smelled like cookies and love and warmth. And so I saw how deeply different my life was from other people. I'll pause there.
And what what age were you when you first realized that this isn't normal?
Probably around 8 when I really first realized. But when I was around 10, I was spending the night over at, like my little girlfriend's houses, and their homes were so nice. And I have memories of their mom making us breakfast in the morning. And there was pancakes, and they asked how I wanted my eggs. And I was like, what? This is so bizarre. I can't believe that I'm being asked about how I want something. I didn't even know how to answer the question, because that wasn't something I had ever been asked before. I didn't even know how I like my eggs, because I was just given whatever. And like, breakfast in a poor person's house is a bowl of cereal and nearly expired milk. So that was really when it came to me that my life was very different.
When after sort of the stay over, you kind of started figuring things out. What did you realize was really different? Because I would imagine when you got back, you started looking at your parents and what you lived in a different way.
So my parents were very broken people, very traumatized people. And I noticed that they had all these problems with each other. Like, they really did not like each other. And our life was really chaotic and it had no foundation. But whenever they would get into an argument with each other, or there would be like, a red bill that we were past due, or there'd be an eviction notice on the door, they would take a pill, or they would drink something, or they would smoke something. And then all of a sudden their whole mood changed. And so I started taking all these mental notes, because I had already dealt with sexual trauma as a small child. I was molested by a family member. And I already knew that I didn't want to be inside my body, that I didn't want to be inside my mind. And I could see that they were doing something that was getting them outside of their mind. So I made all these mental notes, and as soon as I can get my hands on what they had, I started doing that. So that was around the age of 12. I started experimenting with drugs. By 15, I was a full-blown drug addict, everyday drug user. From 15 to 35, I was an everyday drug user. And my parents were everyday drug users as well. And for a large portion of my life, my parents were functional drug addicts. Like, even though my dad would lose jobs all the time, he always went out and found a job so that we would have enough money. And even though we would get evicted all the time, somehow we always got another apartment. And like life was chaotic, but it was still sort of functioning. And
Yeah.
then the Oxycontin epidemic hit. And that was this huge blow to our family. And my parents would go doctor shopping, and they were getting prescribed over 1,000 pills each every month. And somehow every month they were still running out of pills. And so every month it was the chaos of opiate and benzo withdrawal and the lack of money and like the electricity being turned off and the gas being turned off and just total chaos. And in October of 2007, my parents made a decision that they had to end their suffering and they had to stop using drugs. But they didn't know how to stop using drugs. And so what they ended up doing was they committed suicide with one another. They died in a suicide pact. And because they didn't even know that you could just stop using drugs, they thought that you had to die to stop using, because that's what it felt like for them, that they had to die. And my sister and I found them the next day, and they left these really short notes. My mom's note was written on the kitchen magnet notepad, and it just said, "Take care of each other." And at the time, my sister was 18 and I was 23. So we weren't really set up for success with knowing how to take care of each other. And, this trauma was like the most deepest, darkest wound in my life. And I had already been a drug addict up until this point. And when this happened, I heard these two voices in my head. And one voice said, "You need to stop using drugs. They just killed your parents." And then the other voice said, "Well, you can't let go of drugs. That's the legacy of your family. You have to keep using because they can't use. And if you say that drugs are bad, then you're saying that your parents are bad. And you have to carry out the legacy, even if it's super fucked up and not a great legacy. It's yours to carry out." And so I felt like I would be a bad daughter if I didn't just do what they did. And so that's what I did. I caused tons of harm. I stayed super strung out. I was medicating this deep wound of abandonment that I had within me. I abandoned my sister and moved across the country, and I just left her to figure out life on her own while I went to go figure out life on my own. And I got every partner that I could find strung out on drugs. Every man that came into my life, I would make them opiate addicts so that we could be opiate addicts together. And one of my boyfriends ended up dying of an overdose. And I felt totally responsible because I was the one that got us the drugs. He was using drugs because that was my way of living life. And at his funeral, I was completely off my head. I was totally messed up. And I brought another guy to his funeral. Like, the insanity of my addiction was just so crazy. And I just saw the pain on his parents' faces. He was an only child. And I thought, okay, maybe what I'm doing is not right. And so I went home and I did this insane amount of drugs. And I made a deal with myself that if I didn't die, I would go get help. And I woke up the next morning and I kept the deal with myself. And I said, okay, I'm going to go into rehab. And I did. I went into rehab. But I just, it didn't make any sense to me because I had lived my whole life using drugs. I never saw anybody recover. And I had already been in, nearly a dozen detoxes and rehabs, and it never worked before. And so I just kept telling myself that I'm broken and I'm never going to get recovery. It's not for people like me. And so, I left rehab, and I went into 12-step fellowship, and I stuck around for a little while, but I just didn't understand. I didn't understand how people get through their emotions without using drugs. And so I just went back out to using, manipulating people. And in the last 2 years of my active addiction, my whole life just evaporated, like really, truly the bottom of rock bottom.
Because it sounds like it was consistently low for almost from day one for you. So to kind of even get it going lower there, and yeah, the sort of the world that you were living in. I mean, what's the world of a drug addict, functioning drug addict that's kind of doesn't know any different? I mean, I've spoke to the actor Lilo Brancato come on, and he was amazing, and he was telling me about his heroin addiction, but he was saying how his life declined into it. He could see it going down, but yours was almost kind of there from like such a young age there. Did you have any sort of job, any sort of life, or was it just surviving to get drugs or?
Yeah, I had jobs in the beginning, like I was a bartender, I was a waitress. I would work jobs where I could use. So that's kind of a prereq when you're a bartender, like be on
Yeah.
drugs, sell drugs, whatever. But after a while, I stopped being functional. And so I couldn't hold a job. And so I became a prostitute. I became like a would-be drug dealer. You know, I was selling drugs, but I wasn't really, in the end, I was just selling enough drugs to get myself high for free. And then even then I couldn't even keep that together. And then prostituting myself wasn't enough in the end. So I would manipulate other vulnerable women and I would prostitute them to make money from my own addiction. And so that was what I did the last couple years. It was just like I was very immersed in sex work, but in this, I mean, just the most praved way. I had always like done it every once in a I would like I would have sex for money every once in a while when like I couldn't pay my rent or there was an extra bill that came up or whatever. You know, the first time that I did it was like something switched inside my brain. And I was like, oh, I just figured out a secret to the universe. Like, I would have done this with this guy anyway. And he just paid me a couple $100s. So, like, why wouldn't I do this all the time? But what ended up happening was that it warped my view of what sexuality is. It warped my view of men. And at first, I was like, men are chumps. They're all such fucking idiots. Like, this is so great. And then eventually it turned and I started to hate women because I was like listening to all these men and they were saying, you know, how they're just how their the state of their relationship or whatever their victim story was that I was buying into. And I was like, wow, these men, they're really having such a hard time in life. It's all women's fault. And then I started to hate women. And so that's when I had the idea like, let me manipulate women and let me get them strung out. And then I can just prostitute them instead of myself. And I can just be like an ally for men. It was just like my brain was so warped around the addiction and however I wanted to see the world. So that was a really super dark time in my life.
And how old were you at that sort of time when
And
you
the
get to?
first time I prostituted myself, I was like in my late 20s. And then the scene I'm trying to paint for you right now, I'm
Yeah.
around 35 years old. I'm at like that. This is the end of my active addiction, 35.
Yeah. So you tell us when you get into your absolute lowest point then, because you said it got even lower.
Oh my God, so low. It just kept going. I thought rock bottom might. I've hit a lot of rock bottoms, but
There's
this
another rock
this
bottom after this one.
like because you know why? Because it's me that's digging. And
Yeah.
until I stop digging, the rock bottoms will just keep coming. So, yeah, my last rock bottom that I experienced was a drug overdose. And I had overdosed a couple of times before, nothing happened. But this particular time when I overdosed, I had a near death experience or a near death like experience. And so, what it felt like was that I got so high that I met God. And God had a couple of messages for me. One of the messages was, you got to stop using drugs. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. The other message that God said was, you are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. And something else that I learned inside of my spiritual experience was I was shown this download of information that I had actually planned my life before I ever came to earth, and that I had planned all of the things that I was experiencing. I had planned addiction, I had planned prostitution, I had planned homelessness, which is where I was in my life at that point in time. I had planned poverty. I picked my parents, they picked me. I even picked my sexual traumas that I had, and I picked the partners that I would have them with. It was like this insane spiritual information was entering my psyche. And it just broke me out of victim mentality completely. And when I woke up from this experience, you know, I was like pa- sprawled out naked on my bathroom floor. I like sit up, I shake my head, I shake my tits. I'm like, that was what the fuck was that? And I was like, I can't believe that I got that high. Like, am I ever going to be that high ever again? I got so high that I thought I planned my life. I got so high that I thought I was talking to God. That's crazy. So I just like wrote it off as drug induced psychosis because it was nuts. And that wasn't part of my picture. I didn't know anything about spirituality. I definitely didn't know anything about God. I grew up in a family of drug addicts. There's not a lot of space for conversations about quantum consciousness or something bigger
No.
than yourself, you know? So I just kept living my life. I kept prostituting myself. I kept using drugs. And then all of a sudden, it was like the whole universe was conspiring in my favor to get me onto another path. And for instance, all of my drug dealers on the exact same day simultaneously decided to change their lives and stop selling drugs. I'm talking about like 10
Yeah.
different guys. My main guy, I was in I was in a relationship, not a romantic relationship. I was in like a dealer and buyer relationship with him for 10 years. 10 years I talked to this dude every single day because I never had enough money to buy in bulk. So I had to buy every single day. And I called him and I'm like, hey, I want to pick up. Where are you at? And he was like, listen, don't ever fucking call me again. Block my number. I'm blocking you. Delete me out of your phone. I found Jesus. I want to be a good father. I'm out of the game. I'm not selling anymore. And he blocked me at 10 years. I was like, this is crazy, but whatever. I have more guys to call. And so I call up the next dealer and he tells me the exact same story. He's like, I'm out of the game. I found Jesus. I'm like, what is going on? Where is Jesus hiding? Like, how are all of these men finding Jesus? What's going on? It was so bizarre. So then, but I'm a drug addict. So like, I just go out on the streets of New York City where I live and I just start looking for drugs and you can find that they're everywhere. So every time I picked up off the street, it would be fake or it would be bunk. It would start raining and it would like get wet and I couldn't use it, or it would fall through a hole in my pocket and I'd go home empty handed. Everything that could happen to get me onto another path was happening. And then I found myself on this train and I was broken and confused and so lost and the whole train car was empty, which is bizarre in New York City because 9 million people live here. But it's the middle of the day, nobody on the train. Okay. The doors open at a stop and a man steps inside and he sits directly across from me, even though the whole train car was empty. And around his neck, he was wearing this big blinged out emblem for a 12-step fellowship. And I heard a voice in my head and it said, that's your path. Follow him to a meeting. And so I asked this strange man on the train if he happened to be going to a meeting. And guess what? He was on his way to one. And he took me with him. And when I went to that meeting that he took me to, they told me that I had to make meetings every day, that I use drugs every day. And now I got to make meetings every day. And I was like, oh, whatever. I don't know what else to do. So I'm just going to listen to what these people are saying because maybe something is happening that's out of my control. Something weird is happening. So the next day I went to a women's meeting and, I didn't look this way when all of this was happening.
I've seen the before and
Yes.
after pictures. It's like you're unrecognizable.
Insane, totally insane. Eyes are dead, skin is gray, totally sunken in. The way that I looked was even worse than some of the before and after pictures because by the time that I reached the very end of active addiction, I didn't have a phone or anybody taking pictures of me, that's for sure. But I had these huge holes all over my face and my arms because every time that I got high, I thought that bugs lived inside me. And so I would cut myself open with razor blades and I'd burn myself with torches trying to get the bugs out of my skin. And I was missing most of my teeth. These are paid for. And my life really I was totally hopeless. A complete wreck. And so I walk into this women's meeting and this one woman comes and greets me because it's obvious that I'm new. I mean, I look destroyed. And she just held me so tight and she hugged me and she whispered in my ear and she said, you are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. And it was the same message that I heard in that spiritual experience that I was so sure was not a spiritual experience and was just drug-induced psychosis. And I thought, oh, shit, yeah, something real crazy is happening. But I surrendered. I surrendered in that moment. And I rested my head on that woman's big boobies for as long as she would let me. I cried this deep, guttural cry, and I really did give up. And I didn't feel worthy of all the love in the universe, not by a long shot, but I thought maybe I'm worth more than drug addiction and poverty and prostitution and homelessness. Maybe. And so I just kept making meetings, and then I found myself in a long-term rehab and I stayed in there for a year and a half, and that's where I got clean and sober and I learned how to live. I mean, like I didn't even know how to wake up and brush my one good tooth without being high first. This was like a whole transformation that I had to undergo. And it was really hardcore and it sucked so much, but it was so worth it. So worth it.
When you go back to like those moments that happened, do you think it was just something somewhere as like, right, this is your last chance. Let's throw everything we can at her and hopefully it'll stick.
Yes, I do. I really do. So my awareness around the idea of pre-birth planning, right? So if I did design my life before I came here, I designed certain plot points inside my life. Like I didn't plan every bowel movement or every meal that I'm going to eat, but I did pick out the major markers. So 3 of my major markers were addiction, recovery, spiritual awakening. Now, the first time I ever went to rehab, I was 18 years old. I could have learned my lesson of addiction very young, moved on to the next plot point of recovery, and then I would have had a spiritual awakening as a result of practicing the 12 steps in a 12-step fellowship, because that's the promise of the 12th step. But instead, I kept using my free will and I was ignoring the internal GPS and I was just staying in the addiction lesson. And so then in the end, it was like addiction, recovery, spiritual awakening all happened in one moment because I kept ignoring. And it really was the end. Like, you have to learn your lessons. It's time to move on to the next part of your path. And so it was really a forced surrender. It was a forced entry into recovery. I didn't want to recover. This isn't something that I wanted to do with my life. I really liked using drugs. They're pretty fun for a while, and then they stopped being fun, but it was all that I had ever known. And so, yeah, the universe was asking me to step off of a ledge, and I didn't know if there was even footing off of what I was about to step off of. And I thought that I was going to fall, but I ended up flying, and that's a lot better over here. Like, the view is great from up here.
Yeah, of course. And even though everyday life is a hard and a challenge, I mean, the battles you must have gone through for so many years. When you give that woman a hug, it must have been all of those years and everything that you'd been through just come out in one go. I get that with clients in therapy where they just get so overwhelmed. And when was the last time that you had somebody show that empathy, that kindness to you? So, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a mom hug, and at that point in my life, I hadn't been hugged by a mom in 11 years. And so it was tremendous for me. I really felt like the loving, nurturing, motherly energy. And it almost made me recoil. I was grossed out because I was like, ew, what is this? This is very unfamiliar. I don't know what this is.
Yeah. When was the point in your like rehab journey that you thought, hold on, things are starting to change for me?
Oh
Instead of
my God.
staying in that mindset of I'm staying on drugs and I want to fight it, that it's starting and you can start feeling and seeing progress. What happened there?
Yeah, it took me a while, even though I had this newfound faith and I knew that the universe was supporting me. I don't know the universe, I felt like God really had my back, but I also don't know God. And so it's like a new friendship and
Yeah.
relationship. And I only know chaos and trauma. Like, we've been hanging out for a very long time. This new friendship seems better, but like, I don't know. So I was just sharing this story earlier today with somebody, and I was saying that every day when I woke up in rehab on this bunk bed with these scratchy green sheets and in a room with 6 other women who were also dealing with their own trauma and their own recovery. So brutal. Every day when I woke up, I would say, "You're a loser. You fucking ruined your life. What a mess." That was the narrative inside my head, right? But I would just say, "Well, we're not going to use drugs over it," right? Because the voice was like, "Just leave. Like, you're never going to get it. You might as well just go. You've never gotten it before. You're never going to get it now." That probably went on every day like that for like 2 months. But I was reading all these books about how to have a better life, how to be successful, how to be in recovery. And even though my brain wasn't catching up to what I was reading and learning, I hadn't embodied it yet, but I just kept doing it. It was like, get a circle of 5, get 5 people in your life who inspire you. So I found 5 women in the rehab that I was trapped inside of that I felt somewhat inspired by on a daily basis, and I became friends with them. It was like, watch your affirmations, listen to your thoughts, journal every day, like all these little things, be kind to your body, exercise, eat well, just like these little tiny things that I had never done before. And probably somewhere around 2 or 3 months, I woke up one morning and the voice said something different. It didn't call me a loser. It didn't tell me that I was a piece of shit. All of a sudden, the voice was like, "Wow, you made it. Now we get to design the most authentic version of yourself. This is going to be the coolest thing you ever done. This is going to be your greatest act of creation." And now, nearly 7 years into it, I'm still designing my most authentic self. It is the funnest, most creative thing I've ever done. And yeah, that journey inside of that rehab, I mean, it was terrible in the moment, but it was so worth it. I would never give it back for anything. I wouldn't give any part of my story back.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a strong story, and anyone that listens to your story will take so much from it, whether they've took drugs or not, because just the strength that you showed to sort of like hang in there and to seek work, even though your brain's trying to force, which it does to you to go back to what it knows, to overcome that there as well, and to change your belief system and mindset there as well. Yeah. What would you say to people out there that might not have done drugs, and definitely not a level of addiction you had? What was the difference in your life, in your physical, mental well-being from somebody that's on drugs to somebody that's then clean and sober?
Wow. Yeah. As somebody who was on drugs, my whole life was just wrapped around self centered fear. So I never thought about other people. I was a full time narcissist. I had no empathy for anybody. Like, what can you do for me? If you can't do anything for me, I don't want to be around you. Just like, who do I have to manipulate? What do I have to do? Survival mode. I was just in survival mode that whole time. I never dreamed any big dreams. I never had any big thoughts. It was just, what do I have to do to get the next one so that I can stay sedated and medicated and high? Now, as a person in recovery, my whole thought system is centered around service. How can I be of service to other people? How can I be of service to the world around me? How can I be of service to God? And, what do I want my reality to look like? And I get to consciously create the reality that I have today. My life is wildly abundant. I mean, like, really, truly, not just with stuff. Like, I have a beautiful home, I have a loving husband, I have a community and friends, and I have spiritual awareness, but I am connected to source. I am connected to other people. I am connected to my emotions and to the emotions of everybody around me. And those things are such beautiful gifts that I didn't even know existed when I was in active addiction. So I was a really bad person, but I was a traumatized person who was traumatizing other people, because hurt people
Yeah.
and healed people heal people. And it was totally unconscious. It wasn't like, yeah, I don't think as a little girl, I was like, I can't wait to grow up and be a pimp. You know what I mean? It was just something that happened as a result of my mind being so fucked up from being on drugs for so long.
When did you decide what you wanted to do in check?
Mm.
Because you've come out of there's no career, there's no like goals or aspirations that disappeared if there was any a long time ago. So you're coming out of really clean and sober. It must be almost like somebody coming out of prison, because into a degree you
Yes.
might as well have been the whole time. Okay, great. The door's shut. You're free to go. Okay, what do I do now?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I've never been asked that before. So I decided sometime when I was in rehab what I was going to do. I knew that I wanted to be of service, and they had a vocational counselor there who would help you go into school and get training, and the state pays for all of it. So he asked me, "What do you want to?" He said, "What are you passionate about?" I said, "Drugs." He said, "Okay, well we can't do that. Maybe we can put it in a different direction, and maybe you could be a counselor and you could help people in recovery." And I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, if that's really my only option. So we have a thing here in the States, I'm sure they have it everywhere, but it's called being a peer advocate, which just basically means that your whole job is self disclosure. So I say, hey, I'm in recovery. If I could do it, you could do it. And they pay me a salary for that, which is crazy. So I started doing that. And then as I was working with people in recovery, I thought, I'm missing the spiritual component of my life, right? Like I don't get to share about who I am spiritually with people inside of a clinic. So how can I utilize this gift of self-disclosure in all areas of my life, being my truest, most authentic self? And I thought, let me become a coach, right? Everybody's fucking doing it. Why can't I? So I just started a coaching business, and I would get on podcasts every once in a while, and some of them would do good and people would reach out to me, and I started coaching from there. And I've been a transformation coach for over 5 years, and my business has grown exponentially. And I've never, ever could have imagined that this is what my life would look like, but it's pretty rad. I mean, I love holding space with people. I just act as a guide. I don't have like a magic wand that I can wave over people's heads and grant them, whatever they want. But
Yeah.
I got a lot of tools. I've learned a lot, a lot, a lot, not just from my own experience, but from other people's experiences. And I love listening to my intuitive guidance to find out what's the best way to serve somebody.
Did you find as your like life and career progressed in the right direction, automatically your confidence and self-esteem started to build up and your self-value.
Definitely. Oh, yeah. I mean, once I realized that the law of attraction is real, that your thoughts create your reality, and that the whole world is just a giant echo chamber. So whatever I put back will come back to me. Whatever I put out will come back to me. So, like in the beginning, I was like, you're a loser. And the universe echoed back to me, you're a loser. And then eventually my thoughts started to change. And I was like, I'm an abundant person. I'm surrounded by spiritual community. And the universe echoed that back to me. But I've always felt like a leader, hence being a pimp. But like I've always felt like I had the ability to, you know, to be in charge or whatever that really looks like. But, I lead a spiritual community. I not as a cult leader, although who knows, things can shift real quickly. Who knows? But no, I've ever since my experience and I heard the message that I am worthy of all the love in the universe. We all are. And I'm like, me? I'm a crackhead prostitute. I'm a drug addict. I'm an orphan to suicide. I'm a liar, manipulator, thief. I'm a hooker. I'm a pimp. I'm a terrible person. How am I worthy of all the love in the universe? And I don't know how or why, but I know that it's true because I've seen real evidence of it. And so ever since I integrated that knowledge that I am worthy of all the love in the universe, I mean, you can't stop my confidence and self-esteem. It's connected to God. I try to see myself the way that God sees me, which is like a superstar.
Yeah, and everything you're doing is just like growing and growing there as well. And people that are coming to you, people hear your story and then they see what you were before to what you are now. And a lot of them are not gonna have been through what you've been through. So suddenly they might put into perspective with if this lady's been through this and overcome this, well, what can I do? I might not have as far to go. And suddenly there's a bit of confidence there with them.
Is the inspiration. The inspiration is, you got a leg up on me, sis. You can do anything that you want. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have as far that you have to reach up. For me, the bottom of rock bottom had a trampoline in the bottom of it. That's what it felt like anyway, But like I said, I hit a lot of bottoms, and not everybody's trauma is the same. I work with people that they are deeply confused people because a teacher didn't call on them in class when they were in kindergarten. And so they have all these limiting beliefs like, I'm not good enough. I'm
Yeah.
not smart enough. I'm not worthy enough. I'm not pretty enough. I didn't get picked. That no one chooses me. And it just absolutely warps their whole view of life all throughout their adulthood. And so, it's not a competition. There's no reason to compare anything. All of our feelings are really the
No,
same,
yeah.
whether your
Yeah.
trauma is subconscious or very outward like mine.
Do you look back over your old life because you're a different person? It's like a different world, a different lifetime ago. Do you ever look back on it? Do you ever reflect on it, or are you too busy going, "Well, I've done that," and just focus on the here and now and the future?
So I've done a lot of work. I practice the 12 steps in 12-step fellowship, which means that I have to look at my past because I need to be able to see my patterns and my behaviors. Just because I got clean off drugs doesn't mean that I don't have all the same patterns and behaviors. I absolutely do. And it's miserable to be a drug addict who doesn't have drugs, but still acts like an addict because that's like a very uncomfortable place to be. So I'm constantly looking at my belief systems, my patterns. I had to make amends to all the people that I harmed. That was part of my internal work in my 12-step fellowship. That was very, very challenging, but so worth it. Like the amount of freedom that came from my life after I did that was, I mean, just the chains of bondage were released from me. So I don't hang out in the past to live there. I hang out in the past as a tourist to like look at the sites and then be like, okay, let me take this back home so that I can see what I have to do with this. It comes up with like control is a big thing for me. I have like a very insane addiction to control, whether it's perfectionism or productivity or working too much or wanting to control other people's, emotions and how they see the world. Like I got mad at one of my friends recently because they didn't hold the same resentment that I was holding against another person. And I was like, you're not even loyal to me. You were not even friends. But that's how my control shows up today. It used to be control around my feelings. I want to use drugs so that I can control the way that I feel, so that I can control the way that I see the world. And so I have to really look at those parts of myself. And I spend a lot of time in contemplation with them. And every morning I cover them in pink light. And I have a little ritual that I do. And sometimes it lasts for 2 hours. Sometimes it lasts for 2 minutes. But I haven't found the hack to make it last for a whole day. because yeah, like, I'm a human and I have all these personality traits and I just allow them all to come up because none of them are bad and they all make me me.
With dealing with obviously your past addictions there, obviously habits never go away. You have to stay on top of them and teach clients how to deal with that. Do you find that you having to work hard every day to keep the life going you've got and never to sort of ever relapse there, or is it something that is a long way from ever happening?
Yeah, it's funny because I was just having this whole thing with control just this last week. And when I let go of control, I had this really transformative breathwork experience and I felt the control completely collapse. And then the next day, I was just kind of sitting staring at a wall and I was like, oh shit, I don't know who I am without control. What do I do now? And then I heard my addiction very loudly. And this is nearly 7 years into recovery. And my addiction was like, let's go to the bar, let's go get drugs, let's go do this, let's go do that. And I was like, wow, the control has been blocking the addiction from being very loud inside my head. That's once in I probably haven't had thoughts like that in 5 or 6 years. And it's not that they don't go away. I mean, like they come up every once in a while, but it's nothing like the urge to actually act on it. And my addiction manifested in a bunch of other ways when I let go of drugs. It manifested in eating disorders. It manifested in porn and masturbating. It manifested in codependency, in limerence, in all of my defects of character. So I got plenty of addictions to deal with. Like the drug addiction is the one that's the furthest away from me.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to overcome it. But I've spoke to drug counselors in the past, and they say that often they get somebody off of, like, say, like drugs or alcohol, but then it can go to another type of addiction there because the brain's still
Totally.
searching for that addiction.
Yeah, it's like whack-a-mole. Like you get
Yeah.
one thing under control and then another thing pops up.
Yeah, it must just show what strength you've got as a person because you've overcome it, and then you're dealing with new things that's coming up while building an amazing life. So there's a lot of work. It must be mentally exhausting at times for you.
And it's not as bad now as it was in the beginning. And in the beginning, I was inside of a rehab for a year and a half when everything was really coming up and coming to the surface. So I was locked in someplace safe where I couldn't run out and use drugs behind my feelings because there was a lot of feelings. Like I had medicated my grief of the loss of my parents and my boyfriend. My parents had been dead for 11 years when I went into rehab. And it wasn't like that grief disappeared. I got 11 years worth of grief it came through in a 4-month span. Every day was a fucking tsunami of grief and emotions and sadness and abandonment. And I didn't think I was going to survive, but it passed, like it passed over me like a really bad storm. And I knew after that I could handle anything. I know that I have God on my side. I know that I have the universe supporting me. So it's like, how could I pretend like I can't get through something? I know that there's something bigger supporting me. And if it's
Yeah.
supporting me, it's fucking supporting everybody. Okay. Like I am not special. We are all so infinitely special. We all have access to it. If a homeless crackhead hooker has access to it, I'm positive everybody does.
And like now, it's like a different world for you. You got supportive
Totally.
people around you there. It's a safe environment. It just, I always say we're a product of the environment that we're in. If you're surrounded by people that take drugs, you're probably going to end up taking drugs. If you're around safe and healthy people, you're probably going to be safe and healthy.
It's so true. And yeah, I called these people into my life. I set intention and I said to the universe, send me my people. I know I came here with people. I know that I came to earth with a group of people. You send them to me and I found them, and some of them live all over the world and we know each other virtually. And some of them
Yeah.
live in New York City where I live and I have a local community. But I had to really set intention and believe that I'm worthy of friendship. And I don't know how to be a friend. I've never been a friend my whole life. I had to figure it out. And I fucked up. I failed a lot. I hurt a lot of people unintentionally because I just don't know how to build healthy relationships. But I found a couple core people who were willing to figure it out with me. And so that really did change the game for me.
So life's great at the moment, hard work, but it's great, and everything's thriving. What's the future got lined up for you?
In the future, though, I'm writing a book and, like more podcasts, being able to be more like seen and visible and have this story come out in an empowering way. Like it's a lot to come out and share all your deepest, darkest shame and bullshit.
Mhm.
And for a long time, I was really scared of that. I knew that it was something that I was supposed to do, but I was so scared. I was like, oh my God, people are going to judge me. And what if they don't accept me? But like, that's not even my business. It's none of my business. it's only my business to affect the people that I'm supposed to affect. And so that's my intention. Like whether I go on a podcast and one person hears me and they're like, whatever, this bitch is crazy, or I go on a podcast and a million people hear it and a lot of them are impacted by it. My real only mission in this life is just to be of service in whatever way I can, whether it's somebody hearing a story or I build a rehab or I write this book and it helps
Yeah.
people. Yeah, I have this vision for myself where there's a girl on a bunk bed in a jail cell and she finds my book and it just like
Yeah.
totally
Why not?
inspires her to change her life. That's my dream.
And the thing is, how many other people out there the same or similar? And if they're going to read your story or hear your story of how you managed to overcome it, maybe it might just give that person hope. It might change. They might not be that person that does an overdose to see if they wake up. They might go, actually, I'm just going to carry on reading this book. I'm going to listen to this lady's podcast. Actually, what other podcasts has she done? I'm going to listen to all the podcasts there as well. And I think for me, let's talking with you, it's just been absolutely brilliant. I've loved absolutely every second of hearing your story. But I think the biggest thing, apart from your enthusiasm for life and everything you've got going on, is just the honesty in the way that you tell the story. It's just straight to the point and telling the story. And I think when people hear such an honest story, somebody's like there's no holds barred. I'm just going to tell you my story. This is how it is. Take it or leave it. And that really relates to a lot of people. And to hear it is fantastic.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I hope to inspire courage in people. Like there's nothing to be scared of. I know spirit doesn't judge me, so what do I give a fuck if another person does? Like it's not really that serious. It's none of my business anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just amazing what you've done, how far you've come, what you're doing, what you're going to go on to do. Betty, it's been brilliant coming on the podcast. I love you being on there as a guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you for everything that you're doing for the collective.